My mom forgot to press the end button, and what I heard next made me question everything I believed about love, loyalty, and family. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. That night started like any other. I had just come home from another exhausting shift at the hospital. I was lying on my couch, half asleep, when I decided to call my mom. We usually talk every night. She likes hearing about my day, and I like the comfort of her voice. It always made me feel safe. Or at least it used to. We talked for a few minutes about small things. How work was, if I'd eaten dinner, how Dad's back pain was getting better. She sounded cheerful, maybe even happier than usual. When we said goodbye, I thought that was it. I placed my phone on the table and closed my eyes for a second. That's when I heard it. Her voice was still there. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Maybe she didn't hang up properly. But then I heard her laughing, a kind of laugh I hadn't heard in years. It was soft, playful. Then a man's voice joined in. I didn't recognize it. He said her name, Marla, in a way that made my stomach tighten. She told him to stop making her blush. My heart began to race. I didn't want to listen, but I couldn't hang up either. My hands were shaking. Then I heard her say something that made the air leave my lungs. He still doesn't have a clue, she said. The man chuckled and said he never will. They both laughed. My dad, Tom, was the he. I felt sick. I kept listening, hoping maybe I was wrong, that there was some other explanation. But then she said, "You make me feel alive again, Clay." That name, Clay, burned into my mind. She told him she couldn't wait to see him next weekend, and that she'd tell Tom she was visiting her sister again. My body went cold. I realized my mother, the woman who taught me what love was supposed to look like, was lying to us both. The conversation went on for a few minutes, but I couldn't hear it anymore. My ears were ringing. I sat there, frozen, staring at the phone screen that still showed her name. I wanted to end the call, but part of me couldn't. I needed to know how far it went, how long this had been happening. Every word felt like a knife. When she finally hung up, I was still sitting there. The house was silent except for the sound of my own heartbeat. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just stared into the dark, realizing that everything I thought I knew about my family had just changed forever. And it all started because my mom forgot to press the end button. Rhea couldn't get her mother's voice out of her head. Every word replayed on a loop, keeping her awake at night. She tried convincing herself it had to be some misunderstanding, but deep down, she already knew the truth. Days passed, and with each one, she started noticing little things she had ignored before. Her mom suddenly had weekend plans all the time, quick trips to visit Aunt Diane, who supposedly wasn't feeling well. It used to be once every few months, but now it was almost every other week. Rhea noticed other details too. Her mom had started wearing a new perfume, something heavy and sweet, nothing like the light floral scent she'd worn for years. When Rhea hugged her once, the unfamiliar smell clung to her, sharp and strange, like it didn't belong in that house. She caught herself wondering if that scent reminded Marla of him, of Clay. She decided to visit her parents that Sunday, just to see things with her own eyes. When she arrived, everything looked normal. Her dad, Tom, greeted her with his usual grin, wearing an apron that said Grill Master. The kitchen smelled like garlic bread and tomato sauce. Her mom stood by the counter, chopping vegetables, her expression calm but her hands a little too careful, her smile a little too forced. Rhea played along, pretending nothing had changed. She laughed when she was supposed to, helped set the table, asked about their week. But every glance at her mother felt heavier. The way Marla avoided eye contact, the way she touched her necklace whenever her phone buzzed, it all made Rhea's chest tighten. Tom talked about work, about fixing the car, about how he and Marla might take a trip to the coast soon. "Your mom's been extra smiley lately," he joked, nudging her with a grin. Marla chuckled, her cheeks flushing, and said something about trying to stay positive. Rhea smiled too, but her stomach turned. The words sounded hollow now. When they sat down for dinner, the tension only Rhea could feel seemed to fill the room. Tom reached across the table to pour Marla some wine, saying how grateful he was to have her. Marla murmured a soft thank you, her voice catching just for a second. Rhea noticed. Her dad didn't. After dinner, Rhea helped her mom with the dishes. The clinking of plates echoed too loudly in the quiet kitchen. Marla talked about nothing, recipes, neighbors, the weather. Rhea listened but didn't really hear. She watched her mother's hands shake slightly when she dried a glass. Before leaving, Rhea hugged her mom. For a moment, Marla held her tighter than usual, almost like she knew Rhea saw through her. Rhea stepped back, forced a small smile, and said goodnight. As she walked to her car, she looked back through the window. Her dad was laughing at something on TV, her mom sitting beside him, smiling that same strained smile. And that was when it hit her. Her mother wasn't the same woman she grew up trusting. There was someone else behind that smile, someone Rhea had never met before. One evening, Rhea stood in her parents' living room while her mom was in the kitchen. Her eyes drifted to the mantel, lined with framed photos that had always been there. For years, she'd never really looked at them closely. But now, one picture caught her attention. It was old, maybe from 15 years ago. Her mom stood beside a man she didn't recognize. Dark hair, easy smile, hand resting on Marla's shoulder like they were close. Rhea frowned. Her dad wasn't in that picture. She picked it up, studying it. Something about the man's face bothered her. It wasn't just a stranger's face. It felt like a secret staring back at her. Marla returned just then, carrying a glass of water. "You're quiet," she said, forcing a small laugh. Rhea quickly placed the photo back where it belonged and said she was just thinking about work. Her mom smiled, but her eyes darted toward the mantel for a split second, like she knew exactly which picture Rhea had noticed. A few days later, Rhea stopped by again to help her with groceries. They unloaded bags in the kitchen, fruit, cereal, detergent, normal thing. Her mom's phone kept lighting up on the counter. Rhea caught a glimpse of the name flashing across the screen, Clay. Her stomach tightened. She pretended not to notice and kept unpacking. When Marla went to put something away in the pantry, Rhea picked up the phone. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the messages. The conversation was long, ongoing, full of inside jokes and late-night talk. Then she saw the name at the top, Clay, unset girl. The words felt like acid. He called her mother that, over and over. She read a few lines, "Can't stop thinking about last weekend. You looked perfect in that dress." And shut the phone before her mom came back. Her pulse pounded as she tried to act normal. They finished putting things away, Marla humming softly, unaware that Rhea's world was spinning. That night, Rhea sat in her car outside her apartment, staring at her reflection in the dark window. The name Clay echoed in her mind. She knew she'd heard it before long ago in her dad's stories. He used to talk about his old friend from work, the one he trusted like a brother. The man who vanished after a business deal went wrong, taking half their savings with him. Her dad had never spoken his name without bitterness. It couldn't be the same person, could it? But the more she thought about it, the more the pieces fit. The age, the timing, the way her mom's face had changed when she saw that old photo. Rhea pressed her forehead against the steering wheel, feeling the weight of it all settle in. The man her mother was seeing wasn't just someone from nowhere. It was the one person who had already broken her father once. And now, somehow, he'd come back to do it again, through her mother. A week later, Rhea sat across from her dad in the backyard, watching him fix an old lawn chair. He talked the way he always did, soft, steady, patient. At one point, he sighed and said, "You know, I still think about that partner deal that went bad years ago. Cost me everything I'd saved." He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Clay Jensen. Haven't heard that name in forever. Guess some people are just born to take." The name hit Rhea like a slap. She didn't respond, just nodded and watched him tighten the bolts. Hearing her father say that name confirmed everything. Clay wasn't just her mother's secret. He was the man who had destroyed her father's trust and their family's stability long before any affair began. That night, she couldn't sleep. The more she thought about it, the more unbearable it felt. Her mother was with the same man who had taken everything from her father, his friend, his money, his faith in people. The betrayal reached deeper than she'd imagined. She knew she couldn't tell her dad yet. He was kind, gentle, and still believed the best in everyone. Dropping the truth on him now would crush him completely. If she was going to expose it, she needed to know the full story first. The next morning, she came up with a plan. Clay volunteered at a local clinic twice a month. Her mother had mentioned it once in passing. Rhea called the clinic, pretending to be a medical student named Lena Carter, asking if she could shadow a few volunteer sessions. They agreed easily. It felt wrong, sneaking her way into his life like that, but she couldn't think of another way. When she finally met him, he looked exactly like the man from the photo. Same smile, same confident posture. He shook her hand warmly. "Lena, right? Glad to have some help around here." His voice made her skin crawl. Over the next few days, she spoke to him just enough to keep her cover believable. He was charming, practiced, the kind of man who seemed to have an answer for everything. But Rhea could see through the smoothness. The little pauses, the empty compliments, the way he avoided eye contact when talking about his past, it was all there. Each interaction felt like walking across broken glass. She smiled when he joked, nodded when he talked about his simple life. But inside, every word cut deeper. She watched how easily he lied, how naturally he shifted stories to make himself look better. It made her wonder how long her mother had been caught in his web. One afternoon, as he packed up his things, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and smirked. Rhea caught a glimpse, Marla's name. He tucked it away quickly, pretending it was nothing. That was all the proof she needed. Her mother wasn't just hiding an affair. She was protecting the same man who had destroyed her father years ago. And now, Rhea was determined to find out why. When Marla called and mentioned a family dinner, her voice carried that cheerful tone she used when trying too hard to sound casual. "There's this new place downtown," she said. Your dad and I thought it'd be nice if you joined us. Oh, and Clay will be there too. You remember him, right? Your father's old friend. Ria's grip on the phone tightened, but she kept her voice light. Sure, Mom. Sounds great. She ended the call and sat still for a moment, staring at the wall. Every lie her mother told felt sharper now. She knew exactly who Clay was, and she knew what that dinner would look like. A picture-perfect family moment hiding the ugliest truth beneath it. The restaurant was small and softly lit, all polished wood and low music. Ria arrived a few minutes early, taking a seat where she could watch the entrance. Her mother walked in first, looking flawless in a deep green dress, her expression carefully arranged. Tom followed, cheerful as ever, holding Marla's coat. Then came Clay, smiling like a man who didn't know the ground beneath him was cracking. Ria greeted them warmly, pretending everything was fine. Clay extended his hand, and she shook it, keeping her expression neutral. His palm was damp, his eyes flicking nervously between her and Marla. Her mother avoided direct eye contact, fussing over the menu and asking the waiter too many questions. When they ordered, Tom started telling an old story about the three of them from years ago. He laughed, gesturing with his fork, saying how glad he was that everyone had found time to get together again. It's been way too long, he said, smiling at Clay. Feels like the old days, doesn't it? Clay chuckled weakly and lifted his glass. Marla nodded, pretending to agree, her voice tight. Ria watched her fingers tremble slightly as she lifted her wine. The air around the table grew heavier with every passing minute. Ria spoke just enough to keep things from feeling awkward. She asked Clay about his work, his travels, how he'd been keeping busy. He answered with careful politeness, never once looking her fully in the eye. When Tom excused himself to take a call outside, the silence that followed felt almost unbearable. Marla cleared her throat. I'm glad you came tonight, she said softly. Of course, Ria replied, her tone calm. Family dinners are important. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Clay shifted in his seat, pretending to study his napkin. Tom returned a moment later, cheerful again, completely unaware of the storm sitting right in front of him. Ria watched her parents side by side, her father relaxed and open, her mother wound tight and pale, and something inside her hardened. She looked at Clay, then back at her mother. Their shared secret sat like poison between them. In that moment, she knew pretending wasn't enough anymore. She wouldn't just tell the truth. She would make sure they both paid for it. The morning after that dinner, Ria woke with her jaw aching from how hard she'd clenched it all night. Her father's laugh still echoed in her ears, pure and trusting, while her mother's silence felt like a weight pressing against her chest. There was no more doubt. What her mother and Clay shared wasn't just a secret, it was a plan. She began quietly, careful not to leave a trace. The next time she visited home, she left her phone recording in her jacket pocket when her mother stepped into another room to answer a call. She kept her voice casual, asking simple questions whenever she could, pretending curiosity. You've been busy lately, she'd say. Still helping Dad organize his files? Each reply, each hesitation was saved. At night, in her apartment, she labeled the recordings by date. She started gathering pieces like a detective solving a case she didn't want to believe. Every clue brought her closer to the truth, but it also chipped away at her patience. A week later, she searched the attic, claiming she was looking for an old photo album. Dust clung to her sleeves as she sifted through boxes of paperwork her father had stored for decades. That's when she found a folder of property records, mortgage forms, and handwritten notes. At the bottom were documents with both her parents' signatures, recent ones. The name Clay appeared again, written in the corner of a letter about future sales and transitions. Her pulse hammered. They were planning to sell the land her father had worked his entire life to keep. Ria carried the papers downstairs, her heart pounding, and slipped them into her bag before anyone noticed. Later, she scanned everything, creating digital copies and saving them under a coded name on her laptop. She hid a backup drive inside a hollow book on her shelf. She wasn't angry anymore. The anger had cooled into something sharper, focus. She knew exposing the affair wouldn't be enough. Her mother needed to lose what she valued most. Trust, control, comfort, everything she'd stolen from her husband. Over the next days, Ria watched and waited. Every time her mother called, she let her talk, recording the small inconsistencies in her voice. She noticed how easily Marla lied now, how smoothly Clay's name slipped between excuses. Ria stopped reacting. She became polite, distant, unreadable. Her dad, meanwhile, stayed blissfully unaware. He talked about his upcoming retirement, about maybe building a small garden behind the house. Each word made Ria's stomach twist tighter. She smiled for him, knowing what she had to protect. One evening, while Marla chatted on speakerphone in the kitchen, Ria quietly turned on her recorder again. Clay's voice came through clearly. Once he signs the papers, it's all ours. That was all she needed. She stopped the recording, her hands steady. The trap was ready. All that was left now was to decide when to spring it, and how hard she wanted it to hurt. When Rhea brought up the idea of hosting a small gathering for her parents' anniversary, her mother's eyes softened with surprise. "That's thoughtful of you," Marla said, setting down her teacup. 30 years deserve something nice." Rhea smiled and nodded, pretending her chest wasn't tight with bitterness. Her father, sitting across the table, looked touched. "You didn't have to do all that, kiddo," he said. "But I appreciate it." Rhea told them it would just be a cozy evening, family, a few old friends, a dinner she'd cook herself. She mentioned inviting Clay as well, saying she knew how close they'd all been once. Marla's fork paused midair. For a second, something flickered across her face. Unease, maybe guilt, but she quickly recovered. "That's kind of you," she said carefully. "I'm sure he'd love to come." That night, Rhea stood alone in her kitchen, writing a list of what she needed: food, decorations, candles, and something far less innocent: proof. The folder she'd built over the past weeks sat open on her laptop, filled with recordings, copies of documents, and every message that tied Marla and Clay together. The plan formed quietly in her mind, every step deliberate. On the day of the party, her apartment smelled of roasted chicken and fresh bread. Strings of lights glowed across the ceiling. Rhea kept everything warm and welcoming, nothing that would hint at what she was really preparing. Her father arrived first, holding flowers for Marla. "Can you believe she's put up with me for 30 years?" he joked. Rhea hugged him, feeling her throat tighten. "You've been good to her," she said softly. Marla arrived next, radiant in a pale dress, carrying a carefully wrapped gift. "You outdid yourself, sweetheart," she said, her smile a touch too wide. Rhea thanked her, letting the comment pass. A few family friends filtered in, neighbors and old co-worker, laughter filling the space. When Clay walked through the door, he looked entirely at ease. "Been a long time, Rhea," he said warmly. She returned his handshake without flinching. Through dinner, Rhea watched them. Her mother's composure wavered whenever Clay met her eyes. Her father, oblivious, was in high spirits, telling stories and thanking everyone for coming. 30 years, he said, raising his glass. "And I still feel lucky." The sincerity in his voice nearly broke Rhea's focus. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. It wasn't time yet. She needed everyone comfortable, unaware. She moved between guests, keeping the conversation flowing, letting the night breathe. Clay laughed a little too loudly at one of Tom's jokes. Marla kept refilling her glass. Rhea looked around the table, her father beaming, her mother hiding in plain sight, Clay pretending to belong. The scene looked perfect, but beneath the candlelight, truth was coiled tight, waiting. As the plates cleared and the music softened, Rhea's fingers brushed the small remote in her pocket. Her heart thudded once hard. The moment she'd built toward for weeks was almost here. This celebration wasn't for love anymore. It was for justice. Halfway through the evening, when the laughter began to settle into an easy rhythm, Rhea stood up and tapped her glass. The soft chime drew every eye in the room. "Before we cut the cake," she said, her tone even, "I made something for my parents. Just a little tribute. 30 years together. It deserves to be remembered." Her father grinned proudly, and her mother reached for his hand. "That's so sweet, honey," Marla said, the words almost trembling. Rhea walked over to the TV and pressed play. The opening of the video was warm and familiar. Photos from the past, family trips, birthdays, holidays. Old footage showed her dad fixing a bike for her when she was 8, her mom laughing in the background. The guests smiled, touched by the nostalgia. Tom laughed, wiping at his eyes. "You were such a tiny thing," he said. Then the tone shifted. The next clip began abruptly, audio crackling, a different kind of laughter playing through the speakers. Marla's voice, unmistakable, came through. "He still doesn't have a clue." The room went silent. Clay's voice followed, calm and low. "And by the time he does, it won't matter." Every head turned. The air seemed to thicken. Tom's smile faded as he stared at the screen, trying to understand what he was hearing. Rhea stood still, her hands at her sides, her expression unreadable. The next few seconds played out like a slow collapse. The video showed snippets of messages, phone screenshots, and a recorded conversation from the clinic hallway, Marla whispering, "Once he signs the papers, it's ours," and Clay answering with quiet satisfaction. The words filled the room like poison spreading through water. Marla's hand shot toward the remote, but Rhea was faster. She let the video finish. The images faded to black, leaving only the faint hum of the speaker. No one moved. Tom's glass slipped from his hand, shattering against the floor. The sound made everyone jump. He didn't look down. His face had gone pale, his mouth slightly open, as if he couldn't form a single word. Marla tried to speak, reaching toward him. "Tom, please." He stepped back, eyes still fixed on her. "How long?" His voice was low, empty. She said nothing. Clay stood up quickly, grabbing his coat, muttering something about misunderstanding. Rhea moved in front of him, her voice quiet but steady. "You forgot to hang up this time, too." The words landed like a final blow. Clay froze, meeting her gaze just once before looking away. Around them, no one spoke. The The guests sat frozen in disbelief, unsure whether to leave or stay. Tom turned away, walking toward the door without another glance. Marla called after him, but he didn't stop. Rhea stayed where she was, the faint hum of the paused video still echoing in the silence. For the first time in weeks, she didn't shake. The truth was finally out. Tom didn't say a single word as he left the apartment. The door closed behind him with a sound that felt too final. No shouting, no accusations, just silence. Marla stood frozen in the middle of the room, eyes wide, lips trembling. For a long time, no one moved. Then she turned toward Rhea, tears already streaming down her cheeks. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she whispered, voice shaking. "You don't understand, Rhea didn't answer. She just looked at her, the calm she'd forced herself to hold now cracking into exhaustion. The guests began slipping out one by one, murmuring awkward apologies, trying not to look anyone in the eye. The sound of footsteps and quiet doors closing filled the space until only the two of them were left. Marla sank into a chair, sobbing hard enough to make her body shake. "I thought he'd never find out," she said, staring down at her hand. "I was lonely, I made mistakes, but I still love him." Rhea listened, but her face stayed blank. Every word sounded hollow, rehearsed. She'd heard enough lies to know when another one was formed. "I didn't do it for money," Marla added quickly. "I was trying to fix what we lost. I didn't think it would hurt anyone." Rhea finally spoke, her tone quiet but cutting. "You didn't think at all." That night, she packed a small bag and drove to her father's place. The lights were off, but his truck was in the driveway. She knocked once, twice, and waited. When he opened the door, his eyes were red, his face lined with disbelief more than anger. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he stepped aside and she walked in. They didn't talk about the video, or about Marla. He just sat in his armchair, staring at the floor. Rhea made coffee, leaving it untouched between them. The silence stretched, heavy and strange, but she didn't try to fill it. Over the next few days, Clay disappeared completely. His clinic shifts stopped, his house emptied, and no one seemed to know where he'd gone. It was as if he'd slipped out of town overnight. Marla called several times, her messages growing more desperate. Rhea deleted each one without listening. Tom moved through his days quietly, fixing small things around the house that didn't need fixing. Sometimes Rhea found him sitting at the kitchen table, staring at old photographs. She'd sit across from him, neither of them speaking. They didn't know how to start. One evening, he said softly, "You didn't have to do what you did." "I know," she answered, "but I couldn't watch anymore." He nodded, eyes glistening, then looked away. The silence returned, deeper than before. It wasn't angry. It was the kind that came when too much had been said without word. They shared the same house, the same grief, and the same broken quiet. But even in that stillness, Rhea felt something steady between them, a fragile understanding that truth, no matter how painful, had at least left them free. The seasons turned quietly, months slipping by without a word from Marla. The house Rhea shared with her father had grown calm but hollow, the kind of peace that came after too much noise. Tom spent more time in the garden, his hands always busy, his voice seldom raised. Rhea went to work, came home, cooked dinner, and filled the silence with the sound of the TV or the hum of the washing machine. Life settled, but it never felt the same. One gray afternoon, while Rhea was folding laundry, her phone buzzed on the counter. The name on the screen made her heart slow, Ma. She stared at it for a long moment, unsure if she even wanted to hear the voice that had haunted her for so long. Finally, she answered. Marla's tone was careful, quiet. "Rhea," she began, her voice soft but tired. "I just wanted to see how you're doing." Rhea said nothing at first. She listened to the faint sound of traffic behind her mother's words, the kind of background noise that made the call feel distant. "I'm fine," she said finally. "That's good." There was a pause. "Your dad, is he okay?" "He's managing." Another long silence. Marla cleared her throat, trying to fill it. "I've been thinking about what happened. I can't change it, but I want you to know I'm sorry. I didn't mean for things to end the way they did." Rhea looked out the window, watching a line of rain blur the glass. "You meant enough of it," she said quietly. Marla let out a shaky breath. "I miss you," she whispered. "You don't have to forgive me. I just needed to hear your voice." Rhea felt something twist in her chest. Not pity, not anger, something in between. "I don't think forgiveness changes what's already done," she replied. "I know," her mother said. "I just wanted to say goodbye the right way this time." There was a brief, strange peace in her tone, as if she'd rehearsed those words for months. Rhea could almost picture her sitting in that same old kitchen, the one where everything began, holding her phone like it was the last fragile link left between them. "Take care of your dad," Marla added softly. "You've always been stronger than me." The line went quiet. For a heartbeat, Rhea thought her mother had hung up, but then she heard a faint click, the sound of the call ending properly this time. No unfinished echoes, no secrets bleeding through the silence. Rhea stood there, holding the phone against her ear even after the tone began. The hum of the empty line filled the room. It was the same sound she'd heard that night months ago, but it felt different now. She lowered the phone slowly and pressed end herself, the faintest smile touching her lips. The house was silent again, but the silence no longer felt like a wound. It was simply truth, quiet, steady, and final. Hey besties, thanks for staying till the end of this story. Imagine hearing your own mom's secret that shatters everything you believed about family. Ria's world fell apart, but she turned her pain into strength and truth. Sometimes the people closest to us teach the hardest lessons. If this story moved you, make sure to like, share, leave a comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories. See you in the next one. Bye.